to turn the program over to Dino Tata and thank him for coming this evening and for being our speaker. Thank you.
Margaret mentioned she has resources. This issue is the library's copy of Smithsonian, the most recent one, has one of the most excellent articles on the Apollo landings you'll ever find. A lot of information that isn't in any other article. So if you get a chance to pick up the Smithsonian either here at the library or at a store, you'll really enjoy the product. Well, as Margaret said, I'm affiliated with NASA, and this is what I do. I get NASA's word out to the general public, trying to inspire kids to careers in science and astrophysics. And today we're going to talk about the Apollo missions, there and back again. Its 50th anniversary is about almost a month from today, July 20th. It'll be 50 years since Neil Armstrong said those famous words, you know, Houston Tranquility Base, the Eagle has landed. And so it was quite a feat. So why go to the moon? And the other question would be, why did we not have the end of the sentences here? on my program, it looks great, but I notice this happens. But it establishes a leadership and a strategic presence for the country and proves the technologies and capabilities for sending humans beyond the moon, onto Mars or deeper into space. It does tend to inspire a new generation of people to study science. And it leads to civilization-changing science and technology. It broadens industry and international partnership, and it takes us away from being a one-planet species. Now, why is that important? That might be the most important thing of them all. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and in that time, we had 5 extinction-level events where something happened, a plague, a geologic problem, an asteroid coming in. In 75, 85, 90% of all life on the planet was destroyed. And some geologists will tell you this is why we are here. Because 165 million to 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs ruled the Earth. And there were no humans at the time because we would have been lunch. But we were in our mammal stage. And the only things that survived at that were the underground little mammals. Because it just screwed up the whole planet. And that's eventually what we evolved from. So, but there are everyday benefits. The things that we developed on this flight to the moon, it was a whole new technology. Every single thing was brand new. And there were new procedures, new products. But then there's satellite dishes, your medical imaging devices, smoke detectors, joystick controllers, GPS, free-dive foods, all of these things. And one of the nice side benefits was the fact that we had an image of the Earth. We had pictures of the Earth taken from the moon. So we really did get some good stuff out of this. But there are also scientific discoveries. And these are the top 10. Number one, the moon is not a primordial object. That means it doesn't go back 14 billion years like the universe does. It's evolved in a celestial world with identical layers similar to Earth. So it's quite similar to Earth up there. It's ancient and still preserves an early history of the first billion years that must be common to all planets. Now this talks about the surface of the moon. If you look at it with just your eyes, all you see is a flat dish. If you take out that telescope Helen's talking about, or a really good pair of binoculars and look, you will see the craters. You'll see all the craters, you'll see the mountains around the rims of the craters. And that's all asteroid impacts that went in there. And so they're all preserved because there's no atmosphere. There's no weather, there's no rain, there's no wind, there's no snow. So once something is there, it's there forever unless something else disturbs it. So it gives us an idea of what all the planets looked like a couple of billion years ago. And the youngest moon rocks are virtually as old as the oldest Earth rocks. And the moon and Earth are compositionally related. They're formed from different portions of a common source of materials. Now, what is that source of materials? Well, when the moon was only about 500,000 or a billion years old, it wasn't in existence. What happened in the early solar system, as our primordial disk accumulated into planets, we had anywhere from, you could have had up to 80 or 90 planets in a system. And they all, as they circled the sun, crashed into each other, and they accumulated into what we have today. But at that time, there was a planet about the size of Mars, and it's called Theia. And Theia collided with the Earth. And you can imagine something the size of Mars hitting the Earth. It hit it on a sort of an angle, and the Earth became a molten mass. And the collision of that strong rocks and dust was thrown up into the sky, miles up into the sky, so high that it stayed up there and formed a ring. That ring eventually accumulated into what we now call the moon. Now that's a very important thing, because prior to that happening, day on Earth was 8 hours long. We revolved so fast. And the Earth was straight up and down as it turned. So there were no seasons. But when that crash happened, it's a glancing blow. It formed the moon. The moon's tug on the Earth slowed us down to what we have today. And it tilted the Earth, instead of being straight up, it tilted at 23.5 degrees like that. That gives us our seasons. So if the sun is my head, it's tilted here. The northern hemisphere has got winter, the bottom has summer. And then it just comes around when it's on this side. The northern has summer, the bottom has winter, spring, fall. So it really controls our weather. And that 23.5 degree is what we call precession. And it makes a complete circle once every 26,000 years. So that was a very important thing. It's lifeless, no living organisms, no fossils, no organic compounds. So we know there's no life up there. The moon rocks originated through a high temperature process with no involvement of water. Now the high level process could be this collision I talked about. What happened to cause a core at the bottom of the moon of molten rock? And when a big asteroid hit the moon, it would break through the crust. That molten lava would come up, settle in the crater, and turn hot, turn to basalt, basically. That's why when you look at the moon with binoculars or a telescope, you see light spots and dark spots. The dark spots are the solidified lava. We call them mares, sea of tranquility, sea of this and sea of that. Now, here's the 3 types of rocks we find up there. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce the next 2, but for the geological interest in here, that's what they mean. But basically, they all mean rock. So early in its history, the moon was melted to a great depths to form a magma ocean. And the lunar magma ocean was formed by a series of huge asteroid impacts that created the basis filled with those flows. That's what I just mentioned. And mass is not distributed uniformly. On one side of the moon, the crust is thicker than it is on the other side of the moon. That's kind of strange. I don't really know why that would happen. But most volcanic basins are on the near side. The crust is thicker on the far side. The surface of the moon is covered by a raw blue pile of rock fragments called Regulus. Now, we like funny names, I guess, because who knows what Regulus really means. But anyway, this is a simulant of Regulus. And you see, this is what the moon dust would seem like. If you touch it, it'll stick to your finger, because moon dust is very adhesive. And it just sticks to everything. So, how did it all get started for America, going to the moon? But when did we first learn to fly? Well, in 1903, the Wright brothers did it. Their plane, the Wright Flyer, made the first powered flight in America. It flew 12 seconds and 120 feet. Now, as you can see, it's 1/3 the height of the Statue of Liberty or the height of the Saturn V rocket. So we'd have to make 3 trips just to go the distance of the Saturn rocket. Of course, later that day, it flew greater distances. So in 66 years, we went from flying 120 feet to flying 240,000 miles, using a Saturn V rocket that was taller than the Statue of Liberty with its base. So how do we get to the moon? Took a series of programs and a lot of help from 2 very remarkable men. Without these 2 men, we wouldn't have been the first on the moon. First, we have Dr. Robert Goddard. He was a physicist and inventor, and we have he was from Auburn and Worcester. And we have Dr. Werner von Braun, and Dr. Goddard was what we call the father of American rocketry, and because he's credited with creating and building the world's first liquid fuel rocket. He successfully launched it in 1926. That ushered in the era of space exploration. Now this is the flame he used, the frame, and that frame is at Clark University. And of course there's all pipes, they took the pipes apart and stored it, but for the 50th anniversary they rebuilt it, it's up there right now. You can go to Clark, take a picture with it, and you may not recognize the area, but that's the Packagall Golf Course in Auburn. This area has had a tremendous impact on the space program. Dr. Werner von Braun is a German scientist who helped build a massive rocket that sent us to the moon in the years after World War II. He was born and raised in Germany, and he studied physics in Berlin, began building rockets in the 30s. Now, when he came to America after the war, very controversial, because he was a member of the SS. But he, like Dr. Goddard, weren't interested in war. They were interested in getting to the moon. And by joining the SS was the only way he'd get the funding and the permission to work on rockets. He did develop the V2. But he was smart. As the war began to wind down, he could see they were going to lose. And he knew that all the scientists would be taken either by Russia or the United States. He knew if he went to Russia, it'd be all war work. The United States would give him a chance to develop things in a peaceful fashion and get to the moon. So months before the surrender, him and his crew, I think it was 20, 25 of them, started hoarding documents and hoarding parts. And they came like, I think, 20 truckloads of parts. They met the American Army and turned himself over with all the information. They gave us a huge jump on our space effort. So it started with the Ranger program. That went from 1961 to 65, had 9 flights. It was unmanned, no manned whatever on this. And his object was to take close-up images of the moon, because we had to know what it looked like before we could land on it. Plus, with the pictures, we could try to guess what the surface was like. There was a theory at the time that, 4 billion years of dust accumulating, if the dust didn't compact, when the spaceship landed on the dust, it might just sink right in and disappear under the surface of the dust. But gravity, of course, pulls all that together. So that never happened. Next came the Mercury program. And you remember this because John Glenn here, he was the first American to orbit the Earth in 1962. And Alan Shepard, the first American in space in 61. And this is John and that's Alan. And this is the Freedom 7, the spaceship that he went up in. He took the Freedom 7, the other one took the Friendship 7. So it was our first manned space program. And the object was to put a human being in orbit, test his ability to function in space, and return him safely to Earth. That went from 58 to 63. Then came the Gemini Program. That was our human spaceflight program. We were flown from 65 and 66. It was to develop techniques for more advanced space travel, paving the way for us to fly to the moon, getting us ready for the Apollo program. And finally, the Surveyor Program. This ran from 66 to 68. We sent 7 robotic spacecraft to the surface of the moon. Its primary goal is to demonstrate the feasibility of landing on the moon. And as we land it, we can do it. We've got the technology to take a spacecraft traveling 20, 25,000 miles an hour, slow it down enough so they can land safely on the moon. Once we know that, then we can talk about sending humans. Now, not all 7 made it. A lot of them made it to the moon, but they crashed instead of landing. So, and then we moved on to the Apollo program. And this is where things really get good. But we needed a break. Now, a break came when JFK gave his famous speech. We chose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And this had such a good effect on us, because the president, whoever's president at the time, has a tremendous effect on the space program, because they all have their own mind about what they want to do. And NASA reports to the president. So there's been, that program in the last 50 years has changed a number of times, because each president has his own idea about what he wants to do. But anyway, to get us to the moon, JFK gave us 5% of the federal budget. And that was a huge amount. And it took a huge amount because we had to build communication stations all around the world to keep in touch. We had to develop new technologies. It took 400 to 500,000 people to get us there. And right now, today, we have about 0.5% of the federal budget. So much less than we ever had before. But why did he say, let's go and get there before the end of the decade? Well, we were losing the space race. Russia had 8 first. We had 0. And because of this, the nations of the world were no longer looking that much at America as the leadership in technology. They were drifting toward Russia because they had all the successes with technology. So you just couldn't have that. So some had concerns if Russia got to the moon first, they would claim it as part of their sovereign nation. You know, when we land, we said we come in peace for all mankind. We didn't claim it as ours. There was also a concern that you'd build an unassailable military base. And these missiles could be shipped right from the moon and could drop straight on your head before you have a chance to do anything about it. So we had a good incentive to go. But what were the Russians first? Well, first was Sputnik, the very first thing. And I remember I was in the Air Force in Minnesota, and I was out on a teenager. I was out on a date that night. And my girl and I looking at the sky, and beep, 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 going by. I thought, wow, we seen a spaceship. 1956, Leica here was a mongrel from Moscow, the first animal to orbit the Earth aboard Sputnik 2. But she did not survive. Well, she was not supposed to survive because that wasn't the purpose of the flight, and they didn't know how to get them safely back to Earth. But there was cooling equipment in it to keep her cool. The cooling equipment failed, and she died from heat exposure. And then, 60, the first animals successfully orbit the Earth, Belka and Strelka, 2 other dogs, but these orbited the Earth, and these landed safely. Okay, now, I don't see any connection with the fact that all 3 are females. Maybe the canine males weren't brave enough to get into a spaceship. The fourth thing is 59, first man-made object on the moon, the Lunar 2 probe. So Russia was the first to drop a project on the moon. In 61, they had the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. And that added pressure. 63, the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. And I don't believe she was a full-fledged astronaut. I think they picked her specifically for this, and she trained for it. The first spacewalk in 65, Alexei Leonov. And finally, in 1970, the first remote-controlled rover, the Lunar called 1. So this was really, they were doing really great stuff. They were pulling way ahead of us. So we did it in 12 years, from the Sputnik to landing on the moon. And how we did it? Well, January of 1958, the Explorer 1. That was our first satellite we had launched. And later on, NASA took over from NACA. NACA was the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. This put us specifically in the area of space. And in 59, Lutnik 3 imaged the far side of the moon for the first time. Another Russian vessel doing it first, more pressure on us. 61, Yuri Gagarin, of course. And this is the important part. JFK sent a memo on April 20th of 61, sent a memo to LBJ saying, is there any space I think we can do which promises dramatic results that we could win? In April 28th, LBJ responded, the manned exploration of the moon, for example, is not only an achievement with great propaganda value, but it's essential as an objective, whether or not we're first in this accomplishment, and we may be first, and we could be on the moon by 66 or 67. Well, as I said, Werner Braun, his main objective was to get to the moon. The next day, he sent a memo to LBJ. So we have an excellent chance of beating the Soviets to do the first landing of a crew on the moon, including the return capability. So the support is building for the program. May 5th, Alan Shepard made the first flight into space in the Mercury spacecraft called Freedom 7. In May 25th, JFK delivered his speech to Congress saying, first, I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. And we're off. So we did it. 6 American missions landed on the moon. And they all came back home safely. We had 7 missions, but remember Apollo 13 didn't quite make it. They had a power cell burst on the way over. And to show you how brilliant the scientists and engineers were and NASA, they actually got him back alive. The guy should have died. They didn't have enough oxygen, enough electricity, enough power to do it, but they kept manipulating systems. They rode in another part of the vehicle, used it as a lifeboat, and they did it. So July 20th, 69, the first humans to set foot on another heavenly body of the moon, with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Mike Collins, this is Mike. Here's command module. Here's to fly the command module around the moon. That's this little thing that just kept circling the moon while they were on the surface. And I can't help but feel bad being 60 miles from the moon and went 240,000 miles and didn't get to set foot on the moon. But he said he had a good time up there anyway. So the Sea of Tranquility was taken as a spot because it's flat. And that's where we got the words, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Now if you're looking at the moon and you can see the dark areas of light, just look for these two globs right here. The Sea of Tranquility is the bottom one. If you look right under the T, that's where Apollo 11 is. And I have a map here of the moon showing all all the landing spots, not only of the Apollo, but the Surveyor Program and the Russian Lunar Program. So these are a few images from the moon. They planted the flag. Around Apollo 15 or 16, they took up the moon buggy, and that really added to our ability to explore. And we left the original Apollo 11 lander on the surface with this plaque that says, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind." This is the footprint that will be there. Now there's no that's like Neil's first footprint. Now there's no atmosphere, as I said. There's no snow, there's no wind, there's no rain. If nothing lands near that thing in the next billion years, it'll still be there. Here he is. He's taking a sample of the Earth, of the moon rather. And this is that famous moonrise picture. Now this is a plaque they left behind. That plaque has the names of the astronauts that died trying to get to the moon. And it includes the names of the Russian astronauts as well. So this is to give you an idea how far they traveled. This is just Apollo 11. And here's the ship, here's the flag, here's the TV camera to take the pictures. And they only went a little bit. This is U.S. Intrepid Museum in New York. This is the aircraft carrier. Have you ever been on it? Well, this is a very small portion of it. They didn't go far. The only reason you see this long stretch because Neil was over here, and he looked up here and he saw some rocks that looked interesting, so he took a walk up to the rocks. Otherwise, this whole piece wouldn't have been there. But that's just them. Well, this is the SST. Give you an idea how big that is. About the size of that big SST. But this picture now shows you what we did once we had the rover. Here's the Intrepid, right here, this little thing. And this is all of New York. And it covered 17 miles. The rule was that you never get out of sight of the mothership, the land where they landed there. Well, we know who the first guy was, and we know who the second guy was. The last guy to actually walk on the moon was Eugene Cernan. But Harrison, and that means the last guy to step off a spaceship onto the surface of the moon. Harrison Schmitt was the last man to leave the moon. They were both on Apollo 17, and when it came time to get back on the ship, Cernan got on first, Schmitt got on second. So he was the last man on it. He was also the first real scientist that we went. He was a geologist. And so we were just about that time, there was a demand actually to send scientists, which makes a lot of sense. So he was the first scientist. So why do we not go back? Well, it's a lot of things, but we didn't have enough money or interest anymore. When Apollo 11 went out, we had over 3,000 reporters from all over the world at Kennedy Space Center come to see it. Apollo 17, there were probably 300 or 400. Apollo 11 was constantly on television. Apollo 17, very minimal cost. So we made it look so easy, so routine, that the public lost their interest. When they lose their interest, the politicians lose the interest. When they lose the interest, we lose the funding. We lose the funding, we don't go anywhere. So at the same time, Apollo 17 preceded a major oil crisis. You all remember sitting in a gas station line for 2 hours waiting to buy $1 worth of gas? And that had many people questioning the need to divert funds into space exploration when we're getting desperate down here on Earth. The space race had wound down. We won. So that killed a lot of the interest. It's like a horse race. When your horse comes in, no one cares about what happened after that anymore. At the height of the Apollo mission, NASA received almost 5% of the budget. Today it receives about 0.5%. And ultimately the progress required to put a man on the moon in the first place appeared the enormous amounts of labor and capital simply were not sustainable. We're going back, so why now? Well, we can thank people like Elon Musk. The private companies, we no longer need to sacrifice a large percentage of our income to go there. We have SpaceX going up there, we have Blue Origin, we have Virgin Air going up. So they're carrying a big bunch of the cost. In fact, when we go back next time, a lot of the stuff we're sending up there will be shipped on SpaceX vehicles and other companies' vehicles. So it's like we'll hire someone to do it for us. But the excitement's bubbling up again too. See it around there as people get excited about the anniversary coming up. And the corporate, what's happening now is having a corporate space race. They all want to be the guy to do it. because the contracts, you know, they're not a $10 contract. They're hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts. They all want it. So we'll have no shortage of missions in the future. And after half a century looking at the moon, it looks like in another 3 or 4 years we'll once again walk on it. So we no longer have to depend on the government agencies. In the past decade, we had a rapid progression of the exploration enterprises. SpaceX has plans to transport people to the moon. It's been planning commercial tours to the moon for years. In fact, I think it's already taken payments for the trip. But you know, you plan to have $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 for the ticket. But these companies are planning to help us go to the moon. SpaceX, Blue Origin, Astrobotic Technology, Deep Space Systems, Draper, you probably see Draper's ads on TV, Firefly Aerospace, Intuitive Machines, Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin builds a good part of every Apollo flight. Marsden Space System, Moon Express, and Orbit Beyond. There's a lot of interest from companies in helping us get to the moon. It's a very lucrative business for them. But by then, Apollo 11 was magnificent. It was a real milestone. But all in all, it was mainly an engineering and operations test. It culminates a decade of exploration and trying and discoveries. It's the shortest visit to the moon. It was only about 3 hours, and then back off again. So they had the smallest EVA, the smallest time in the moon, brought back the smallest amount of samples. Because basically it was a test flight all the way down to the surface. But with the return of the Apollo 11 samples, we're in a new scientific era, because we now have material that we can analyze, and it's from a source that we're familiar with. We know where these samples came from, not only what heavenly body, but what part of that heavenly body. And so there were two major geologic resolutions that in the 60s, plate tectonic theory, I believe it used to be known as continental drift, and lunar samples and planetary science. So it really was something special. So 50 years later, with the LRO, the LRO is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. It's a satellite we have orbiting the moon. We still study the entire moon, and much of our understanding of the moon is derived from the samples of the surface experiences. We think of Apollo 11 as the end pieces on a puzzle, and we've been building in to fill in the puzzle from the sample things we get from the lunar reconnaissance. But one of the things we notice is in the last 50 years, the analytical techniques have improved. They've changed. So we do a better analysis of the moon rocks and everything else now. So our assumptions, we always leave them open for change as analysis gets better. Well, it's still new after all these years. We still got a lot to learn about the moon. And it's led an incredible legacy for us. Is America the only country who believes there's value in going to the moon? What do you think?
Probably not.
Okay. So these 8 countries have already sent missions there. Israel, India, China, United States, Japan, Russia, and the European Space Agency. And this one really gets me. Luxembourg. Luxembourg, is that about the size of Southbridge?
Yeah. Well, Worcester County.
Worcester County, maybe, yeah. See, that surprised me to see that. So, do you think we're the only one who plans to go back? Now, these 8 countries have planned missions. China, the United States, Germany, Japan, Russia, South Korea, Israel, and India. So there's a lot of interest worldwide, globally. We're not the only ones trying to get there, but it'd be nice if we beat everybody back, because we don't want to lose our lead in technology. So now, 2024 and beyond. That's the date we plan to land, and on a program called Animus 2. Now, here's the reason we're going now. In keeping with the Space Directive #1, NASA's charged with landing the first American woman and American man on the moon by 2024, followed by a sustained presence 2028. So you ladies are coming with us this time. You may even be in charge of the ship. But anyway, this is a quote from the head of NASA, Jim Brizendine. He runs NASA. He said, President Donald Trump directed NASA to land American astronauts on the moon by 2024. We, the people of NASA, accept this challenge. We will go to the moon in a way we've never gone before. Go with innovative new technologies and systems to explore more locations across the surface than was ever thought possible. This time when we go to the moon, we will stay. And then we'll use what we learned on the moon to take the next giant step, sending astronauts to Mars. So this is, this is very important. Now the question comes, how do we get there? Well, we got there 50 years ago. But you know what 50 years means? The technology is obsolete. The people who did it are either in a nursing home or passed on, or they'll be quite old now. And the technology we did back then just won't work today. We have to develop all new technology. We did it before, we can do it again. The Animus program. Animus is the twin sister of Apollo and the goddess of the moon in Greek mythology. So now she's leading us back to the moon. When they land, they'll set foot where no human's ever been before, the moon's south pole. Now, all the other ones, if you saw that map, or if you look on this map here, you see all the landings are around the equator. The equator is nice and easy to reach from Earth. South pole is different. It's much more rugged than top. Plus, it takes more translunar adjustments on the flight path to get there.
Isn't it also where they found water?
Yes, they found water. There's a crater we're going to land in, and they found water down there under the surface. And it's just a much harder site to work with. But we wouldn't go there with Apollo because we weren't going to stay. Apollo's going to be 2 or 3 days on the surface and then come home. This time we plan on staying. So now it's worthwhile to go. So it's 2 phases. Phase 1 is a human surface landing. And that's to develop missions and systems required to achieve landing us on the surface. Phase 2 is 2024 to 28, is to establish a sustainable long-term presence. Animus Phase 1 to the lunar surface. Well, Animus 1 is going to be the first human spacecraft to the moon in the 21st century. Now, that's an unmanned spacecraft. It's not going to land. It's going to go up there, orbit the moon, and come back home. That's so we can test to make sure we can still do it. Animus 2 is the first humans to the moon. That'll take humans, and that won't land either. That's going to circle the moon. And that's so we can test humans out there in space with the new systems to see if they work and how things go. And finally, Animus 3 is the one that's going to get us there, and we're going to land. So that's 5 years away. But what's going to happen first is companies like SpaceX and Boeing and others, they're going to send these commercial lunar payload services up. That'll be survival equipment, that'll be air, gas, oxygen, water, all the supplies we'll need. And when we land there, we'll be able to utilize those to keep us going. Think of it a lot as having an International Space Station on the surface of the moon. But we'll use our Space Launch System and the Orion spacecraft. This is the Space Launch System, and this is the Space Orion. They're the backbone of our exploration program. Everything we have depends on these 2 vehicles. We'll fly out of Kennedy. It's our spaceport. Every mission we've had up there has flown out of, they're usually out of Dock 39A. This is SLS, the Space Rock System. The highest payload mass and volume capability to send human and cargo deep space forever. This rocket is capable of sending a heavy object to Mars. And when we send humans, it'll be a really heavy project. This is the Orion spacecraft. Now, if you want a close-up, this is the Orion spacecraft right here. This model is a 3D printed model. Was made by the students at Bay Path High School in Charlton on a 3D printer. Now, the solar system is well launched. And it carries 4 persons and all supplies needed to survive 21 days. It has its own solar electric propulsion system. See, these are the solar panels. And so it can propel itself where it has to go. And this is a priority for Animus 1 to demonstrate the heat shield at lunar velocities. Now that's totally different than coming back from the space station. It's much faster when you're coming from the moon. Test to see if the systems operate in flight environments and to retrieve the spacecraft afterwards. And this is how it's going to do it. We'll fly around the Earth to take off, and then we'll get the translunar injection, go out to the moon, circle the moon, head on back to Earth. into a landing. So that's just the trajectory it's going to take. Now Artemis 2, its first priority is a safe return of the crew, because this is our first manned flight. It's going to evaluate the Space Launch System and the Orion system performance in deep space, because things work different in deep space than they do on Earth. You don't have the effect of gravity, you don't have temperature differentials, things like that. It can perform Orion and ground segment redundant system activation to check it out. And here we go with Artemis 2. Now right here, Artemis 2 launches, and in 2 it enters Earth orbit. Too close, it blurs. And then at 3, that's what we call apogee rays burn. That puts it into a high Earth orbit. And then around the next time, we burn the main engines, and that sends us out into space and on our way to the moon. 5 is the translunar outbound. We'll just keep going. And then 6, the lunar flyby. We'll fly by at 4,000 miles up of the surface. And as it comes down, the trans-Earth return. We'll get our jets to take us back here. Here the crew module will separate, and the entry descent starts landing. And down here at number 10, we recover the crew and the capsule. So how do we communicate? A number of things. At that distance, as the Earth turns in its rotation on its axis, communication changes. So we have a base set up in Goldstone, California, Madrid, Spain, and Canberra, Australia. It's called a Deep Space Network. And this was part of the reason Apollo was expensive, because we didn't have any of these facilities. These all had to be built from scratch. So as they flies here, Goldstone takes care of it. And as it gets out of Goldstone's range, Madrid picks it up. As it gets out of Madrid's range, Canberra picks it up. And then it's back to Goldstone again. So how do you live in this? This is 3 astronauts. These are actual astronauts. This is Rick Mastragaco, Karen Nyberg, and Stephanie Wilson. And they're practicing in their emergency suits exit to make sure you can get out of the spacecraft quickly in an emergency. So to sustain them, we have 2 things. So this simplified life support systems and environmental control. You have things, your brine processor, urine processor, water processor, oxygen generator, carbon dioxide removal, and then we have water management, atmosphere management. And all these things are going to be tested on the second program. What they're doing here, this is what I mentioned to Schmitt, this is part of that other picture. These are their emergency suits. And what happens is, most people don't know, but when the astronauts fly like this, they have 2 spacesuits. They have one for extravehicular activity, and they have this one here, the emergency. They wear the emergency for takeoff and landing. The only time they really wear the stiff suit is when they're walking outside the ship. Because that spacesuit is like a little spaceship. It's got everything they need to survive. It's got air pressure. You're sitting here with 15 pounds air pressure per square inch. You get up on the moon, it's not there. You go, you'll have a real problem. But the air pressure inside that suit keeps them well. It's got the water, it's got everything they need inside their suit. It's like a little spaceship. But it's bulky and it's stiff. It doesn't move as easy as what you're wearing now. So the most dangerous flight, just like an airplane, takeoff and landing, so they wear these emergency suits. If they can get in and out of the ship easy with these. Now I tell you, this area has a lot of connections with the space program. The suits were always made at David Clark Company in Worcester. And if you go to science expos, like a couple of weeks ago we were at WPI for the Touch Tomorrow Expo. It's a science expo. And David Clark is at all these things with his suits, and all the kids get a big kick out of trying the suits on. So the risk and challenges, well, you're launching aboard the most powerful rocket. The Saturn V had 7 million pounds of the most dangerous fuel in the world. You're sitting on top of it and someone lights a match. Up you go. And it does not have an off switch. Once you turn it on, you're going until that fuel all burns off. The re-entry velocity, I said it's greater than coming in from the space station. You're hitting the atmosphere at 25,000 miles an hour. So we have a brand new heat shield, because the heating on this will be twice as much as the shuttle. Almost twice as much. So we have a brand new heat shield we made. But the thing is, as you enter Earth's atmosphere, if you hit too shallow an angle. You're going to bounce off the atmosphere and go out into space, and we'll see you in 1,000 years or so. If you're too steep an angle, you're going to pin it right through and go straight down. So you got to hit it at just the right angle for the thing to balance properly. Of course, you've got an open ocean recovery in the middle of the Atlantic, middle of the Pacific. That can't be a lot of fun. And it takes up to 5 days to return to Earth in emergency. Let's say you're out in space and you have an appendix attack. If you're on the International Space Station, we can have you on Earth in 3 hours. Here it takes us 4 or 5 days. You could be gone by the time we get you on Earth. So the Iranian Progress, the ship is already being built. This is the core capsule. That's where the guys are going to be. And this green is all primer paint. And the capsule itself is welded aluminum because we can't afford any leaks where air can leak out or anything can leak in. And this is the SLS, the rocket. These are the fuel tanks. They're being built, and I've heard that the engines are ready already, but I'm not really positive about that. So the Orion has to have an abort test. The important thing is we have to get the astronauts off that ship during takeoff if something happens. And this is how it works. We have the full mock-up of the Orion launch ship. And in here is a full mock-up of the Orion space capsule itself. So we ship it up, and after 55 seconds, we activate the abort sequence. And at 31,000 feet, going 1,000 miles an hour, the abort motor fires, pulling the crew away from the rest of the ship. The launch system abort separates, leaving the crew in the right orientation for a splashdown. So it doesn't just throw away and leave them standing. It orients them for the proper re-entry. And then the crew module separates, and the parachutes deploy. It lands in the ocean, and it blows out 2 data recorders. We recover those so we know what happened. So, explore the moon in 2024. Artemis 2 will be the first human flight in low Earth orbit since 72. It'll provide complete systems and operation checkout. Artemis 2 lessons learned can be mitigated prior to putting the humans on the moon. And Artemis 3 will bring human presence and landouts to the gateway. And I'll tell you what the gateway is in just a second. Gateway, this is gateway. This is what I said, it's like a little space station orbiting the moon. And it's our contact point, because we're landing in a crater on the South Pole, which means they can't talk to us. The line of sight is gone for the radio, so they can't communicate. This will be a communications relay. The crater will relay to this, and this will relay to Earth, we'll relay to that, and that'll relay to the moon. At the same time, it's an aggregation point for all our ships to arrive at. It's a spaceport for human and robotic exploration of the moon and beyond. Minimal human habitation is not really meant for you to stay there forever. It's going to ferry humans to the lunar surface and back again. And this will be launched after Artemis 2 and before Artemis 3. And that pretty much covers it. What's going to happen now, normally we have our spacecraft to land. And this is a 2-part, I'm sorry it's so small, but it lands. This is the descent vehicle, and this is the ascent vehicle. So it leaves that command module, goes to the surface and lands like that. When they're ready to leave, this part blasts off, goes back up to the mothership, this part stays on the ground. And it all goes in one piece right now. But it's going to go up on 2 separate flights. These were made to carry 3 people. The new one's going to be made to carry 4. And it's going to really be quite an event to see. So July 20th this year, it's our landing on the moon, 50 years anniversary. And you can look at the moon and say, we were there. More than that, we were the only ones there. No other nation has done it. Russia has landed vehicles on the moon, unmanned. China just landed one on the far side of the moon, I think it's a Chang 1 or something like that. But we are the only ones that had human beings. We set up 7 flights, 6 made it, and no one died on any of the flights, even the one that didn't make it. 12 men walked on the moon, and we have something like hundreds of pounds of lunar samples that we can use for anything we want to use for, to test. Much of it was given out to different countries of the world, a sample. We have packets we hand out to special teachers. The teachers have to take special instruction to get certified. And their life is forfeit if they lose them. But it's really something special. If you're ever at Kennedy Space Station, which I highly recommend, because there's a place there where you can actually go and touch the moon rocks. So you can say, I touched another heavenly body. I reached out 240,000 miles. Okay, now, when we depart at NASA, we say ad astra, to the stars. So thank you all for your attention. I appreciate you coming out tonight.